There was no experience of passage of time. There was no experience of space, no dimension at all. Your mind is looking. But who's controlling your awareness? Not you. Mindfulness is when you know you're aware, not just aware, you're aware that you are aware. And then you actually have the capacity to sort of guide this awareness. Meditation develops our ability to notice. It's like the art of notice.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Holistic Happiness Club, the space where we explore what it truly means to live a fulfilling life. Not just through success and achievement, but through inner peace, emotional well-being, meaningful relationships, mindfulness, purpose, and conscious living. The alignment between your inner peace, inner world, and outer success as well. I'm your host, Akshay Tiwari, and in every episode, we dive into conversations that help you grow, not just externally, but internally too. Let's begin. All right. Hey, Rashad, welcome to Holistic Happiness Club. How are you?
Hello, Akshay. Thank you. All good. Happy to be here.
Yeah, it has been a long time since we have spoken and a lot of things has happened. But let's stick with you because it's all about you in this episode. So yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do? What have you been doing so far?
So I'll go in three different parts
Sure.
based on what I've been doing in my life so far. So obviously my name is Rashad. Currently I'm working as an assistant professor of computer science at ADA University, which is in Baku, Azerbaijan. This is my office. I'm still on campus. And so I'm teaching computer science. That's like one part of my life. So I've got my education in South Korea, and pretty much almost half of my life I've been living there, a bit more than 14 years. So I can say South Korea is like my second home with lots of friends, lots of people there. So that's like one direction of what I do. And at the university, another responsibility I have is to help people with startups and innovation. So we have this thing called an innovation center. So I'm leading that center and helping students to create their startups. The other part of my life has been in business. Well, although my education was in computer science, but then when you live in different countries, sooner or later, you end up thinking about international business, trade, and
That's true.
products. So I've been doing some of that and continue to do that. And of course, in my case, it has been connected to Korea, to things that are manufactured or made in Korea.
Mm-hmm.
And the most important part for me of all of my activities is actually in the third one, which is mindfulness and meditation in my case. So that is something I've been interested in and sort of practicing in my own way from my childhood years, I guess since less than 10 years old. But then what we would call formal or more of a official meditation practice, that has started since 2007. And since 2018, I've been having my regular daily practices and learning more in knowledge. And more recently, within the last 2 years, I've been learning and training to become a teacher myself. So these three are like the big directions in which my life has been. Yeah, that's me. So I'll be happy to address any of those.
Sure, we will go into all of those because we are talking with you and not a particular vertical as of now. So quick follow up with your introduction that you said that there are three different parts that you do. So there is this mindfulness. Actually, we are more interested about that. But
Sure.
yes, of course, everything that you do makes you a person. So how do you see this? I mean, dividing time and being in three different places, or it is just three different things that a person does and all are connected to one another.
So the way I see it from this day and age is, I think, just like with the physical body, where we have our DNA, which forms us in a particular way.
Mhm.
There are, of course, all these influences from our genetics, the environment, and so on. I believe in the same way as a person, as a personality, there is this process that we sometimes call individuation, right? There is a process of becoming who you are every moment to moment. And I start seeing and observing more and more that there we also have something like, call it DNA or call it some direction, which makes each of us a unique personality. So then in my case, as I've been following that sense, and what I can call it in other words is the practice of being me, right? Being authentic and genuine to who I am. And so in that case, I actually don't separate these to three different parts.
Yeah.
I mean, I just separated it for comfort of explanation, but in reality, this is one life. So I tend to not separate work and life and different things.
Yeah.
So basically, in life, I have this tendency to want to grow, to want to develop, to want to expand, to connect to others, to other human beings, and influence and learn from them. And so those have happened to be three different avenues from which I have been doing this, right? So for my job and for computer science, this was what I got interested as a kid. As many of us like the games, IT, and all those kind of things. So that's more of a practical thing I was very curious about. And then when it comes to business, usually when we get to a certain age where we see that we could change something in the world, do something real, we want to go there. But then pretty soon, I think we realize that all kind of knowledge is essentially knowledge about ourselves.
Right.
And then this curiosity leads us to be curious about what's in. So the mentality, the things that drive us, we start asking different questions about why did I do that? Why did I do something else? So being conscious sooner or later, I believe will take us there. So that's what happened to me. And so that is why for me, the part with awareness, consciousness, and meditation has been the most profound of all these.
Yeah. So I want to know a little bit about your journey that, as you said, that as a kid, you were introduced to meditation and mindfulness practices. And as a kid, you got interested in computer science and technology. Getting interested in technology is, I think, makes more sense to me as a kid because we see fascinating gadgets and
Right.
of course we can get attracted towards technology. But how did that happen that you got introduced or interested in mindfulness and meditation practices as a kid? And how much do you think that has shaped in what you do right now in all three avenues, being introduced to mindfulness and meditation as a kid? Because a lot of us has discovered this thing very, very late in life. There is no right or wrong, but I'm just asking from the point of view of people in our age who are usually parents as well, to think about their kids as well. So what actually changes for a kid when he or she get to introduce to these practices? So from that perspective, and I want to know your journey, what has happened, what makes you interested in that, and what has changed that?
I mean, that's a really great question because you allow me to connect how these three actually are together. So the whole interest in computer science and meditation started from the same place, which is curiosity about who are we, who am I, and what's this world, what are we doing here? So it just happened to be that my grandfather was a physicist. And in my family, the majority of people are either engineers or teachers and like so similar fields. And so on one hand, I was always encouraged to think and ask questions and, explore the world, learn about sciences. And so pretty quickly, I've started noticing and maybe reading about different theories like the string theory or, be it some other ideas about what our world is. And then in parallel to that, in school and through folklore, we get exposed to different ideas about the Greek mythology, the Indian mythology, the Norse mythology. Then we have different religions. Like in my country, we have pretty much all religions to smaller or larger extent. So I've kind of started exploring all of these avenues to try to find answers to the questions of what is this life? Why are we here for? Like, who am I? And more of a scientific path led me to always more and more questions, right? And there's no end to it. And we know that there probably will never be an end because we learn more and there are more questions. And so when I first saw the first game on a computer, right away that fascinated me because I thought, oh, there is a world in my monitor, right? There's an actual world there, but I see it in 2D. So I got curious, like, how do you make it? How is it created? Who makes these things? So that started my curiosity to computer science. And I was hoping that seeing how an artificial world like a game could be functioning could tell me about how this real world maybe functions. And when I compared that in parallel to some theories of physics and specifically in terms of philosophy, I think we call it cosmogony and cosmology, about where the world comes from, you do actually see many parallels, right? So as a kid, I mean, I'm not seeing it in a very serious scientific manner now, but just as a kid, I thought, all right, so there are these string theories, energies, vibrations, and, waves, radio waves in the real life. And then I know it's pretty much the same happening in my computer, which is like processing and generating these things.
Yeah.
So that pretty quickly got me interested in then who is seeing all this, right? Where is this coming from? And so somehow in my family, there was no insistence on any particular tradition, right? So I was encouraged to look into the philosophy of Christianity, the philosophy of Islam, the philosophy of Buddhism, and other sort of traditions. And while I love and I respect all traditions, all cultures, what attracted me to more of a mindfulness and meditative practices is that there is a matter of faith and there is a matter of experience. So I respect both paths, but for me and my personality type, I love faith. I love people who believe, but I prefer some things where I can actually experience. So on one hand, I do respect and revere these great personalities who have had some great insights and some holy books and so on. But then if as a human being, me, myself, I can discover things about me, about what I am, who I am, I would much rather try to learn that. So this was like what I realized very quickly before the age of 10 that, okay, meditative practices are something where I'm not required to believe in anything.
Yeah.
And I am enabled to practice and learn without expectation of accepting this and that. And as far as I'm a human being, I can just try to learn. And that was like the main thing. And as a kid, how it influenced me is actually quickly it teaches you to start noticing that there are perspectives. Because when we're children, we could easily believe that there are absolute truths and absolute lies, and we have authority figures like parents and grandparents and teachers.
Yeah.
But if you have even a little bit of a contemplative and awareness practice, in such case, I think you quickly realize that there are opinions, there are perspectives, there are points of view. And the more of those you can relate to and understand, the closer you get to whatever we can call reality. So the truth of the matter. So I think that was the biggest effect of getting introduced to these things early on.
Sure. I will touch base upon the second part of the question once again. But before that, I would like to ask that you said that you have been doing these practice or you have been practicing these since childhood, but more of a formal practice you started in 2017, right? So what happened in time and how the practice was going? Because a lot of time I meet with people and to some extent I also started meditation and not mindfulness, but a certain type of meditation in my childhood. But I could not, always continue that. It was always like I'm doing for some time and then something is taking over and then I'm forgetting that. And then after a few months, I'm remembering that practice again and I'm starting that again. And I'm sure that happens because I have met with people. It has happened with a lot of people as well, that people start, they might not be able to continue. So I'm more curious in that, in this time, that what happened between your childhood to from your childhood to 2017, and what has happened in 2017 that made you to continue or formalize these practice and make it a daily routine.
Right. So up until 2007, I was just being very intuitive, right?
Mhm.
Sort of practicing just observing nature or myself or other people. And like with a lot of people, things can sometimes start when you notice that, like if you just sit in a restaurant or a cafe or a classroom or elsewhere, you may develop the tendency to observe people and notice how things are happening, and you start seeing patterns and different behavioral issues. We can't call this a formal practice at all.
Right.
But then there were some little booklets or some books that my parents had at our house, and some sort of maybe a TV show or something I may have heard some from somewhere. So slowly I start developing this sense that, oh, there are people who actually do these things as a separate practice. They sit, observe, they do journaling and so on. So I was doing all this more on more of an intuitive matter.
Okay.
And then I don't really know how to tell this in a clear way. So I'll just say what actually happened. So I think I was about age of maybe 6 or 7 or some range of that.
Mhm.
And I had a very strange and a peculiar experience one day. So what happened is I was playing with a cousin of mine in a countryside area where we were for vacation. And at some point, for external observers, it looked like I either like fell down and got up and kept playing or something. But what happened for me is I actually moved to a totally other dimension, right? So basically, I was a kid, right? So as a kid, I suddenly see that I'm at this different place,
Okay.
and I'll try to describe it to the best of my ability. But the experience was there was no experience of passage of time. There was no experience of space, no dimension at all, and no colors, no nothing. So as a kid, I remember my first impulse was to move, to try to move forward,
Hmm.
but there was no forward, like the dimension did not exist. All right. So I couldn't know what it is, what this thing is. And I felt like I've spent a very long duration of time there.
Hmm.
But then later I was told that for external observer, it was just that, I kind of fell down, got up and kept playing or something like that. So I think this was one of those moments which got me very, very curious, right? Because that kind of experience, it tells you that there's something about you which is more of a being conscious, being the observer, being the awareness rather than just the physical body or what you think and so on. So of course I couldn't explain it in these terms when I was a little kid. So I think this was the first thing that got me very interested in this sort of things. Then in 2007, when I was 17, it was the first time I went abroad for my studies as a bachelor student. And it just happened that I got stuck in an airport in Istanbul for 3 days.
Mhm.
And when I was in the airport, there's not much to do. I spent all the money and there are still 2 days to spend. And suddenly I remembered that there is this practice of watching your breath. And up until the university entrance times, we're all so busy with different exams and preparations and so on. And so there I was thinking that I have these 2 days, 3 days. Let me just try and see what it is.
Yeah.
And so from that point, I first got experience of what we normally call meditation,
Yeah.
right? Which is when you sit or lay down and observe something, like, for example, breath.
Mhm.
And then forward to 2017 or 18, in that 10 years, I kept trying to learn, listening various lectures from different teachers and traditions, reading some texts and learning about neuroscience and so on. And when I started my PhD in 2018, I was at this university in Korea called KAIST, which stands for Korea Advanced Institute of Science and Technology. But then once I started my PhD, they simultaneously started a contemplative science research center. So this is a place where very experienced meditators and neuroscientists, they come together and they organize programs and they study the brain and they study meditation. And their main focus was to create and establish non-religious, evidence-based meditative practices.
Mhm.
And while I was always looking for places where I could start serious practice, formal daily practice, this was like a blessing for me. So what I did is I started attending every program they held. And so also, while I did graduate studies, the environment is very conducive because I lived alone in a dormitory room and I didn't have to work. I don't have to care about money because there is scholarship and all that. So mostly there was lots of time for research and lots of time for self-exploration. And so I just used this as an opportunity. So I guess to answer your question specifically, first, this childhood experience, then the realization that there are actual formal methods to practice.
Mm.
And then thirdly, having the opportunity and meeting the right people who can teach you. And the key point, I think, was that the people, the teachers that I met, they never asked for money. They never asked for me to revere them like a great guru or something. So I got a very high quality instruction and teaching for nothing in exchange, right? So when we read these old texts and stories, we see that that is how it was supposed to be, right?
Yeah.
You know, and so somehow I guess I got very lucky or blessed that I happened to meet these people. And I'm very, very thankful to everyone at KAIST and all the other people who I learned from. So there were some great individuals who I had the chance to learn and observe.
All right. So I was saying that I will come back to the second part of the previous question, which was that how these practices do you think has helped you or anything? I mean, how they have changed you compared to the people who were not doing this?
Right. So the biggest change is for the ability to form perspective.
Hmm.
So rather than rush with my own quick opinion or with how I feel, because whenever anything happens, we may like it, dislike it, and so on. But then very quickly, I learned that everything is a perspective. Everything depends on the point of view. So the other thing was the ability to develop empathy. So these days, this word is very popular. People like to call themselves empath and whatnot.
Yeah.
But I believe this is a quality that all of us can develop. So the so-called compassion and self-compassion and all that. So I think these two things, the ability to form perspective, abstraction, and this helps a lot in research, in education, in business, because it becomes easy for you to start noticing the views and opinions of others other than yourself. You gain the ability to be self-critical as well, not in a negative way, but kind of take a bird's eye view and see whether you're doing things correctly. So I think all of this can be summarized to the ability to observe yourself as a third person. Because
Right.
that is when you can be less biased and less confused about what things are happening. And I think that's the biggest help I've got early on, because that helped me be a bit more independent, be clear about what I want.
Right. All right. So far we have been talking about mostly the informal practices. Can you talk a little bit about that? How these practices used to look like? I mean, how they used to fit into your daily routines?
So you mean like not formal meditation practice, but
Yeah.
whatever intuitive things
Yep.
I would be doing.
Yeah.
So these were different kinds. So one of my favorite ones was to observe nature. So I started noticing that when I'm in a forest near to the sea, ocean, or trees, nature basically,
Mhm.
I started noticing that like you turn into this observation mode. You just get pleasure of just seeing nature, just observing what things are happening. And so I noticed that if I normally have a certain attention span, when I'm out there and giving my full attention to what's happening, then the whole noise in the mind gets quiet and I'm able to be here now, very grounded, observing the nature. So I used to do that a lot. So even when I was in a city with access to a river or to a sea or to ocean, I would probably go 2-3 times in a week at least, just to be near the water, see the water, observe what's happening. That would help me a lot. The other thing is to observe dynamics in social circumstances.
Mhm.
So I would just go and sit, be it could be library, could be a cafe, could be a certain family gathering or whatever. And if I get the opportunity to stay quiet, silent, and just notice why and how people are doing certain things, that was another. And also one interesting practice I did was drawing or doing some sort of writing, but in a slow, almost calligraphic way.
Mhm.
Because when you get some stress or some distractions, focusing on one thing and doing some physical work, that really helps. And so mostly it was these things, plus the more closer to meditation sort of a practice was observing my body. So what I mean by that, we all have the ability of feeling what's happening inside or with our system. And I think we call this as interoception. So the ability to see what's happening on the inside. So I'll be always very curious to just notice, like, what do I feel in my body? How does my breath feel? And how do I feel when I lay down? How does it feel to walk? How does it feel to do different things? But this did not really take a form of something official that you could call a body scan or something. I was doing it on a very intuitive way.
Mm.
And also there was no component of controlling anything, just observing.
Mhm.
So these are some things I could remember from early on.
Sure. So now we are moving a little into formal ways. Before that, nowadays, a lot of mindfulness expert or so-called expert as well are there, and everyone has their own definition of mindfulness. So how do you see mindfulness? What actually it is? And yeah, let's start from there. That how do you see mindfulness?
Sure. So I think there is a very well-known issue of problems with translation, right?
Mhm.
Because even the word itself, mindfulness, is like sounds like the mind is full, while it's not really there.
Yeah.
And we may have heard about John Kabat-Zinn, who's the person who sort of pioneered bringing the practices from Asia to US and the West.
Yeah.
So I really prefer the expressions in languages where mind and heart are expressed by the same word. So if we look at many traditions and cultures where these meditative practices are originating from or very deeply practiced, the words they use for the mind, for the heart, for the soul, sometimes are the same words.
Yeah.
And I really prefer that approach because I think as a humans, we are a holistic system rather than different parts. So in that sense, for me, what normally is called mindfulness is more about being aware, right? But not just aware, with the ability of directing this awareness. Because even when we are scrolling, someone watching TikTok or Reels or whatever, you are being aware, right? Your mind is looking. But who's controlling your awareness? Not you. You are being led by algorithms and by other factors. So I would say mindfulness is when you know you're aware, not just aware, you're aware that you are aware. And then you actually have the capacity to sort of guide this awareness, not force, but at least guide. And when you notice it's not where is beneficial for you, you can gently bring it back to where you think it should be. So for me, that would be mindfulness, basically awareness of what's happening.
Before we continue, if you have been enjoying these conversations and they have added value to your life, I would really appreciate your support. Please take a moment to subscribe, leave a rating or review, and share this episode with someone who might genuinely benefit from it. And if something in this conversation resonated with you, Let me know in the comments or send your thoughts and feedback. I truly read them, and they help shape future episodes of Holistic Happiness Club. Your support helps this message reach more and more people who may need these conversations right now. Now, let's get back to the episode. And how about meditation? I mean, how do you see that? It's the two sides of the same coin, or you separate them? I mean, for people who thinks differently in terms of practices, that okay, mindfulness is this, or meditation is focusing on your breath maybe, and mindfulness is just observing something. In terms of practices, how do you see, or it is the same, as I said, two sides of the same coin?
So when we say meditation, people understand lots and lots of different things.
Yes.
And there are types of meditative practices which are observation only, nothing else.
Yeah.
So maybe many have heard about various Vipassana retreats, the ones started by Goenka and other people and so on. So these are great. And they're really what they do is just observe.
Yeah.
But I prefer more of a technical definition that is quite similar to the classical traditional yoga definition.
Yeah.
And so I would define meditation as attention that is maintained on a single object. And this object could be anything. It can be an actual physical object. It could be an internal object. It could be breath. So then when we observe anything, it takes a form of a thought. So even if I take whatever, like an apple or something, and I keep looking and keeping my attention on that, in my mind, it's the image of the apple, not the real apple.
Yeah.
So I would technically define meditation as when we maintain our consciousness and awareness with a single thought only. This is a very technical thing. In simple terms, is when your whole attention span is occupied with one thing and one thing only.
Yeah.
And plus, if you have the capacity, if you've developed the capacity to not be distracted. So let's say if someone is observing one thing, but keeps constantly getting distracted and coming back, this is not really a state of meditation. So meditation is a state of mind, state of consciousness. So rather what we normally call meditation is practice, is a sort of a preparation for the actual meditative state.
Yeah.
So when someone says, I am meditating, usually what they mean is they try to keep their attention on the breath or something, but of course we get distracted and we come back and we come back. So this is that would be more of an attention training, not the meditative state itself.
Right.
So that's how I would differentiate.
Sure. I specifically asked this question because a lot of beginner, and not even beginner, there are people who have been trying to meditate or doing these meditative practice. They also get distracted. I think we all can get distracted at some point in time, that we are trying to meditate and something else comes in mind. A great example that is coming to my mind is from the Kung Fu Panda movie, the latest one. He tries to meditate and he's like, inner peace, and
Yes.
to dinner, please, please. But in reality also it happens, and a lot of people just leave that because it's not for me. I'm not able to pay attention to one thing. So anything for them, for people who are leaving this because they are not able to keep the attention on one object or one thing.
So the first thing I would say, meditating is not about time. So it's not about how long you meditate. So I also see and meet people who brag or show off that they meditate for an hour and 2 and 3. That's not what meditation is about. Surely even 1 minute, 3 minutes, or 5 minutes of when you can really maintain your attention on a single object is much more valuable for your development rather than doing and sitting for hours. Saying that, distraction is totally fine. It's actually during the distraction that we learn, that we get better. So I think of the analogy of training a muscle. So when we are in the gym and we're training, we don't really train too much when we hold the weight up. And we don't train too much when the weight is down. It is when we're moving that we train. So then in meditation, we also train our mind exactly when we get distracted. So in that sense, distraction is good. It's great. So we get distracted, we notice, we come back. And it is in that gap that our meditation progresses. Because in time, this distraction, if it was long, and it gets smaller and shorter and shorter and shorter. And at some point, you're at the point, right? You don't get very distracted. And that is when real meditation practice starts. And so I would say it's great that you get distracted. The fact that you notice you're being distracted means you're doing
Exactly.
right. So I think it's totally fine, and being distracted is great. It's just about noticing, being non-judgmental. And this is why we do it, because we want to practice distraction and coming back from distraction. So I would say it's good to be distracted.
Sure. Okay, moving on, that when you started your formal practices in 2017, have you seen or noticed any change? That's one part of the question. And second part of the question, that you are also in the technology industry, which is very, very fast moving. And especially after 2022, I think it's moving even faster after AI has been introduced to the common people. So, yeah. So the fast moving or the very competitive industry that you have to keep up with. So that is one vertical that you deal in. And how do these things help, like mindfulness? Because I get to hear from people, because I'm also in the same industry, I get to hear from people that it is so much that I'm not having time to do any of my practices. So anything like, does this help in this area of your life as well, or in any other area of life as well?
So I'll start with changes. So actually, there are lots of changes that others notice and you notice yourself.
Mhm.
So with a maintained and continuous practice of meditation, the first thing that changes, you become very observant. You start noticing things. And it's always hardest in the beginning, because many people, when they start meditating and when things go well, then the first thing they will notice, the amount of noise and thoughts in their mind will get more, not less.
Yeah.
And why we experience that is because those thoughts and noise was always there. You just never noticed it.
Yes.
And now that we develop our ability to notice, you start seeing things. Right? And just like with any other resources, like money, like power, like influence, having the resource of attention, which is a great resource, will simply amplify what you already are. So if I'm someone who's very miserable and then suddenly I develop my concentration and meditation, chances are at first I will get a bit more miserable.
Mhm.
If I'm someone who's already very happy and grateful and like a positive person, chances are meditation will allow me to get even more grateful and more positive, because basically meditation develops our ability to notice. It's like the art of notice. So if in my life I was conditioned and trained to notice negativity, see problems, see issues, then I'll see more of them. If I'm trained to see a lot of good things and gratitude and positivity, I'll see more of that. Right? And so then the real advantage with further meditation practice becomes that you notice you could actually change it. You don't have to be defined by others. And so meditation allows us to see how we are conditioned, how we are influenced by our background, family, society, expectations, and so on. And it's not a bad thing. It's part of being human. But you learn that you have control. You can actually choose where to put your attention and what to do with it. And that's where freedom really starts. Coming to technology, that is a great example because that's like fastest changing field these days.
Yes.
Early on, those of us who started in technology early 2000s or even before that, then we have this older, like maybe perception where, let's say, if we talk about software development, You start with learning programming, then you do a lot of programs and you build products. And someday you become maybe a project manager, and then you become an architect, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So we may have this expectation that I'm supposed to know it all. If there's something new comes up, I must know that, and so on. So I think this modern changing situation teaches us exactly that no, we don't need to know it all, right? So as soon as we accept that, then where meditation comes in is this sense of service, sense of being of service to others, and sense of being contributing, useful person. So the way I handle it is I don't try to know it all. I don't try to be up to date on everything because I can't do it. I try to see, because in the end, all technology, all sort of softwares, IT, all of it is to serve humanity, to serve other fellow human beings.
Right.
So what I do is I try to figure out where do I want to serve humanity. And so teaching, be it programming, be it doing something else, then quite quickly it becomes obvious what are the tools that I most need to master. What are the skills that I most need to keep upgrading? Where can I do the most impact? And this is where meditation and mindfulness and awareness comes in, because without really being self-aware and aware of the situation, it could be very tough to be confused by money, to be confused by opportunities, because the more technology we have, the more opportunities we have.
Yeah.
And on one hand, it's great, it's amazing. But on the other hand, choosing also becomes a problem. Choice is a big thing. Decision making is a big thing.
Paradox of choice.
Yes. And so I've noticed that the proper meditative practices will help us notice, why do people look for me? Who searches me? Who benefits from me the most? And I would say I was never shy about directly asking people about it. So while risking to get a negative answer, I would still be willing to ask people, can you tell me how, if ever, I was useful to you? Or how could I be useful to you? I even remember I used to do surveys on Instagram or among my colleagues. So in one of the companies that I was working, it was called the Air Premia. It's an airline in South Korea. And my job there was being a project manager and acting as a liaison between the IT team and the business unit. And so within a month or so after I started working, I made a Google form and sent it to everyone and told them that it's anonymous. I'm not going to know who wrote what, but I really need you to tell me, how can I be a better colleague? What am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? Or how can I be more useful to you? And people, I didn't expect this, but people were surprised, because apparently it's not really done unless it's your professional evaluation, right? For salary or something. And so I think for me, meditating has helped to have this level of awareness, and it enabled me to look and search where I could be useful. And that's how I manage this whole technology thing. Even now, every day things change. Like in AI, every month we get new tools, new platforms. It's literally impossible to follow up with all of
Right.
those.
Exactly. I mean, there are influencers who drop one update on a daily basis on AI field that, okay, this is the new tool that has come up. And they have been doing for so many days and it's still going on. So yeah, it's really kind of impossible to keep up with everything.
If I may, I mean, you touched a great point. I think that's one thing where we can be confused, because when we see these people who post something new every day, we may get an impression that they know it very well.
Right.
That's not true. Their job is to update you about updates. Right. So that's their job and they're good at it. And thanks to them for doing it. It's good to keep us informed. But if you really talk to the people who make the most money using AI, or make the most impactful software using AI, you'll quickly notice that they have 2-3 main tools that they use regularly. Right. And whenever there is an update, they simply change one tool for the other. They keep doing the same thing. It's not like they're on the lookout to know everything. Yeah. That's not what they do.
Right. All right. Coming to the third vertical of your life, where you have said that now you have started teaching people also to be aware and be more observant, or simply put that, being more mindful about it. So how did that happen? And what prompted you to take this path, and how is it going, and what kind of experiences you have had so far?
So pretty quickly early on, you get into these conversations where people ask questions and you have discussions with friends
Mm,
and you share honestly what you think and what your experience is.
right.
And in my case, what started happening is a person who asked something started coming back, right? They would ask to have another meeting in a week,
Mm,
right? And we would continue talking. And somehow that sort of an image may develop around you. And then people meet for tea, for coffee, you have these discussions. But never have I imagined that I would maybe helping someone or guiding someone to start meditating, because I used to think that that is something like only some Zen monks do, and like some what do you call sannyasins or
yeah.
famous like yogis do.
Mhm.
So I've never really tried to do it. And I was careful about doing it too, because it's a responsibility to tell someone and guide someone. But while I was doing my PhD at KAIST, and there were these formal programs that were led by a very famous Zen monk and professor in Korea. So his name is Misan Wandu Kim. And so he's my teacher. And in his case, he's a person of two worlds. So he's a Zen monk, formal Zen monk from childhood, and a very, very prominently educated person. He holds a PhD from Oxford at the same time. And he has studied all traditions very thoroughly. He has practiced in various traditions. And so, especially seeing people like him and others, it made me very, very careful about like this whole business of sharing with someone. And so while there are people like this, whenever somebody asks a question, what I would do is I would redirect them. But as you know, people can be busy. So sometimes I would ask on their behalf and clarify something and share back. And what started happening next is, since I've been meeting my teacher regularly and having participating in all these sessions and programs, after about like 2 or 3 years, they started inviting me as a teaching assistant to these meditation courses. So the university started supporting regular sessions for any students and faculty who want to learn some contemplative practices. And I started as a fellow like participant, then a teaching assistant. And slowly I noticed that, I may be able to slightly share some experiences or maybe guide people in terms of what I've been going through. And after some time, my teacher also gave me a hint or suggestion that, it's not a bad idea, since you do have this personal experience. And then it seems you do have the capacity to sort of formalize it in terms of like expression. 'Cause there are some great practitioners who don't like communicating,
Right.
or whose verbal skills or eloquence is not where they want to actually share it. So having these hints and suggestions, I decided to keep going and like try to get the official permission to teach. And I started going to all the programs and various retreats up to a point where I was permitted to meet some people and share. Still, I was very careful and I didn't really do that. What I did is I started an Instagram page where I would simply share my experience, my thoughts and ideas. And after some time, there were some friends of mine who have been trying to meditate or learn meditation for years.
Mm,
And they've somehow not managed to do it properly. They didn't find someone to guide them, or they ended up meeting groups who are more into experience hunting,
mhm.
not really meditating properly. And so we started meeting like an hour every week. And at some point, they started requesting me that, hey, can we make it something regular? Like, I actually want to do this officially. And it was very difficult because some people then started suggesting that they would like to pay for it, right? Because they were saying that, okay, you're spending your time and energy, so we think it's only appropriate. But I was very conflicted because none of these great people who I learned from ever asked me for anything. It
Right.
actually was the reverse. I got some gifts, some helps as a student rather than giving something, right? And so it was a very difficult process to decide how to get it done. And so through these experiences, I've come to notice that rather than positioning myself as a teacher, what I do is I just say that I'm a practitioner of meditation. This is what I do. All I can do is share what I practice. All I can do is share things that have been confirmed by evidence, or we have some medical knowledge about how things work. But what I do is I only share those things that are very clear, very simple, that I have experience with, that have been tested in tradition. So the condition is I have to have the experience myself. This practice should be coming from some very, very rooted tradition, be it Buddhist tradition, be it any other tradition, be it from yoga, but it has to be tested for thousands of years, right? And then it should also have some evidence from medicine, from science, from evidence-based approaches that it actually works.
Mhm.
And let me tell you like some very simple example. Like from the medical evidence, we know that for physiological reasons, when we inhale, our heart starts beating slightly faster. And when we exhale, the heart starts beating slightly slower. So then we have medical evidence that if you do long sighs or if you prolong your exhale, then you get relaxation. So there are some things that are very obvious. And it also happens to be that the most effective things are the simple things, the very not complicated things.
Yeah.
And so I've started that way, and I'm continuing now with whoever wants to hear and meet. And I do my best to hold some open sessions at the university. So far, I think we've done 5. And the way I do it is I announce it, and whoever students, faculty, administrative people, and sometimes even people, the general public from outside the university would come to these sessions, and we discuss, we share, we practice together. So that's how I keep going with it.
Okay. That has led me to an interesting question before I move to the last part of this episode on this podcast. The question is that how do you see and how much important it is a role of a teacher in someone who wants to start these practices? Be it a kid, be it a professional, or be it a student in their higher studies, because there are various stages of life. And when you are on different stages of life, you get less and less teachable sometimes. And I have seen people that who, I mean, try to do so many things because a lot of things are available online. Most of them are conflicting, and you end up confused sometimes. But even if things are not available online, let's say, and if you are following one book, or so, what was the importance of a teacher in one's journey? And yeah, let's go from there. That what's the importance of teacher in one's journey in
So,
mindfulness?
so I believe having a competent teacher is extremely important. It is a requirement, I think, right now.
Right.
Why? Because whenever there is anything that can have an effect on our well-being, on our health, mental state, we have to be very, very careful, because mental states and states of mind is something very, very delicate. So as you said just now, there are lots of different techniques and videos online. But for example, if somebody has a strong panic attack, and usually panic attacks, people experience this in the central line of their body. And so for someone who doesn't know or doesn't have any background knowledge, they would easily suggest them to focus on their breath or something, and this will trigger a panic attack. So this is just one example. But if you read about it, there's lots of harm that may come to people by practicing random things.
Right.
And so this is one reason. On the other hand, I am not supporting the structure where the teacher is highly revered, almost like a religious figure, or like this some extreme guru's disciple relationship. Because in the end, nobody can go your path except you yourself. So it is your job to do it. So when I say teacher, what I mean more of it is a guide, is a friend, is someone you respect and trust enough to share what they have done. And so that you trust them enough, you feel safe and comfortable enough that they wouldn't be lying, they wouldn't be confusing you, they wouldn't be extorting money from you.
Mhm.
And also, it's important to notice that whoever you're trying to learn from doesn't have these ambitions of gathering a following or a culty kind of a things. You can feel that
Yeah.
pretty quickly.
Right.
And so, as far as it's a respectable and a reliable person, you can probably start asking around. But in the end, we have to remember that everyone is responsible for themselves. So the number one person who's responsible for your health, for your condition is you. And for me, it's me. So I have to take this responsibility of scanning and vetting and studying someone from who I want to learn. And the final part, I would say, it is a requirement that I insist on, that when I want to learn something, I need to make sure that the person I'm learning from has already done that, has already achieved what I want to achieve. And we should be very open about it. We should ask them. Plus, we should ask them, can you get me there as well? Right? So when I saw a person who is non-conflicting, who is very good in communication, who is very loving and very open, that's exactly what I did. I clearly asked my teacher that, I admire the way you talk to people. If normal conversation feels like people want to win or lose or be the right one, I don't feel that in conversation with you. So how can I become someone like that? Do you know any methodology to do that? Because there could be a person who is very loving, very kind, but they don't know how to share it with others. They just are. And so these would be the main points I would look for. And you can go up to some point on your own, which is also fine.
Yeah.
Because it's life and we can't always meet someone and follow someone. But I believe, if possible, it's best to find a reliable person to guide.
Yeah. All right. Very well said about having a guide or a teacher, or not necessarily some avatar who came from heaven who will guide
Yes.
you, something like that. So yeah, now we are in the last leg. So in the last leg, I have prepared for some rapid fires for you. So no
Right.
overthinking, just whatever comes to your mind. So shall we start?
Sure.
Sure. Okay. So number one, Rashad is a morning person or a night owl?
Morning person by choice, night owl by nature.
Okay. Yeah, that's the part of the job. Okay. So meditation app or no?
No app.
Okay. And why is that?
Apps create dependency. They might be okay to start, and it doesn't lead to where I think meditation should lead. But it's great to start. It's great to start.
Noted. Okay. One word to describe the mental health of the world right now.
Confusion.
Okay. Yeah. Very well said. Okay. Most overrated productivity advice you keep hearing.
You mean like in terms of business productivity?
Yes.
I'd say that is keep grinding, keep doing, no sleep, hustling. That is the worst.
Yeah. Yeah. It has more disadvantage than advantage, I feel.
Yes.
Okay. A book that genuinely changed how you think, or may not have changed how you think, but has a lot of impact on you.
Right. So let me actually tell you the precise title, probably, because this book is on mindfulness and compassion.
Mhm.
So if I may have just a second, I'll give you the specific title. So it's a book titled The Mindful Path to Self-Compassion.
The Mindful Path to
The
Self-Compassion.
Mindful Path to Self-Compassion, Freeing Yourself from Destructive Thoughts and Emotions by Christopher Germer. And this is a great book. I would recommend it to everyone.
I haven't read it, so yeah, I'll add one in my reading list. Sure. Phone first thing in the morning? Yes or no?
Sorry?
Phone first thing in the morning
Definitely not.
and last thing in the night?
Hopefully not.
Finish it. Okay, that's an honest answer. I love that. Okay. If mindfulness were a sport, what sport it would be?
Oh, it would probably be like professional mountain climbing.
Okay, and how do you draw these parallels?
Well, because there's always the easy valleys where you need to walk and be stable. And then there are moments when you need to really
Oh,
go up, but you can't
right,
stop. You need to keep going.
right, right.
And in terms of consistency and resilience that it requires.
Of course. Very nice. Okay. What do you do when you lose focus or sometimes feel overwhelmed?
I stop. I stop and reflect. And there is this 3S thing that I learned from my teacher. 3S stands for stop, smile, see.
Okay.
Meaning that I stop, I bring a smile, and I remember everything I'm grateful for. And then I see my situation again. I look at it again, and then always I will see different sides, different directions. Right?
Okay.
And if you would allow me, I would like to also share a very quick practical.
Sure.
So usually if we all just pay attention to how we feel ourselves in the body, when we're distracted, we may kind of feel like out of the body in a sense. We're not really present in the body. So one thing that works very quickly is if we feel like I'm coming back to my body, and then this may be interesting or strange, but if you just try to bring your attention to the front of your body, specifically your face and the frontal part of the body, as soon as we do this, we will feel very much present here now and engaged. So specifically bring the attention to the front and face and rather than the backside of our. So it just happens that when we're more into ruminating and thinking and something, this awareness goes more to the backside of our body, to the behind of our head and neck. And as soon as we bring our attention to the frontal part, somehow we happen to be present here and now. So I think that could be helpful for many people.
Wow. Okay. One thing you wish you had learned 10 years earlier.
There are no right answers.
Wow. That's a good one, actually. Yeah. That changes a lot of things in the daily life as well as professional life, I guess. Yeah.
I think to me, it's connected to the misbelief rather that for everything there is a right and correct answer and there is someone who knows it and you can figure it out by studying or learning more. While that may be true for some things,
Right.
for most important things in life, there is no perfect or right answer. And it is more important to develop the abilities to be in touch with what you want, what your gut feelings are, what your goals are, what your real opportunities are, and then having the courage of making making decisions, rather than endlessly looking for that perfect thing.
Right. Okay, the last one in the rapid fire. Last thing that made you genuinely laugh.
It was actually a sunrise for me.
Sunrise made you laugh. Okay.
Yes, I was just, there and I was sort of preoccupied with some stress and some thoughts about my work and some projects and so on. And then suddenly you see the sunrise and it's so beautiful and it brings you back to the moment here and now. And
Yeah.
made me laugh about what I was so worried about, just a moment ago. And then you just become very present and life is much better and positive.
Yeah, I can feel that. I can feel that. Okay. Okay. Last two things. So, second last is people who are hearing you, I'm sure they would want to come to you for more questions if they have. But if somebody wants to start now or with anything and want to feel some change in their life, what small thing they can start with?
In
What they can
terms of
do? Yeah,
mindfulness or
in
maybe,
terms of mindfulness. Yeah.
I would say, may I say two things?
Sure.
So, so the first, I think the biggest problem most of us face these days is this self-critical and negative voice or opinion of ourselves. And so the first practice I would recommend is training ourselves to notice when this self-negativity or critical thinking, negative thinking comes up, this negative voice in the head. And in advance, we prepare a list of things we are grateful for, we're thankful for, a list of things we're happy about ourselves, some great things about us, maybe whatever you can find. And so whenever you get this thought of negativity or something, don't suppress it, don't push it down, don't negate it. Just allow yourself to switch your opinion from these thoughts to that list that you prepared in advance, things you're grateful for. And this could be a great attention practice because it will train our circuits in our brain to go from negativity to positivity.
Wow.
And the second thing I would recommend is to learn to simply slow down and sit or stand, doesn't matter, but develop a habit of just stopping and doing nothing. Okay. It's important to not confuse doing nothing with suppressing things. Doing nothing meaning to not intentionally do something. Like some people will notice if they try to sit quietly or stand or lay down, suddenly their legs will be jittery. Their shoulder will move. That is fine. What I'm trying to say is develop a practice, a minute, 5 minutes per day, where you simply go quiet and do not intentionally do anything. Just notice, see what's happening. I think these two are great practices for literally anyone that you
Awesome.
can get started with.
Thank you so much, Rashad, for your time.
Thank you, Akshay. It was great time
And
great.
before we wrap up, I would like to, people who would like to reach out to you, where they can reach out to you. Is Instagram or any other place?
I think the easiest would be Instagram, aware.with.rashad. So my name. And yeah, I'll be happy to reach out, to communicate, to talk.
Sure.
Hopefully I can be helpful.
I'm sure that you will be helpful. I'm sure. And thank you so much once again for your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, it's my pleasure that you are here. And I hope to see you once again very soon, sometimes whenever you have time. And we will talk
Sure.
about things that we have discussed today, but maybe we'll pick one or two things and we'll dive deeper into them. And we'll try to uncover some of that are there and that creates confusion in people's mind.
It was great pleasure. It was great pleasure. I would love
Thank you
that.
so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Before you move on with your day, take a moment to reflect on this conversation. Because sometimes one small shift in awareness can completely change the way we experience life. Remember, the goal is not just to become successful. The goal is to become whole. Thank you for spending this time with me on Holistic Happiness Club. I'm your host, Akshay Tiwari, and I will see you in the next one. Till that time, stay well and always remember, happiness is a lifestyle.